wonder, have any of you ever had any issues?
None, a few here and there. Has anyone had any of those things we call effects show up in their life? Some of that stuff that might make us feel a little unsafe or not so comfortable sometimes. Okay, well, I take it from the laughter, maybe a few of you can relate. And have any of you had someone say to you, well, just let it go? Let go and let God. Just release it. Just allow it to unfold. Now, I ask you that because I know that some of you have heard it because I've told you that. Huh, Justine? She's back there nodding. Yeah, you're the one that told me that. And has anyone, well, I'm sure, first of all, that as soon as I say that, you all just let it go and it's all real easy, right? Yeah, it's just super easy when someone says, let it go. Oh, right. And you just let it go and everything is perfect. Or do any of you sometimes feel the way I've felt, where when I think about letting it go, it's kind of like jumping off a cliff into a free fall and there's no safety net down there and I just have to see what happens. Anyone ever felt that way? Yeah. When you just let it go. Does letting it go ever bring up those fears of the unknown or change or newness? And is there anyone else who just wishes things would go exactly the way they planned it? I mean, if it would just go the way I planned it, it would be perfect. Well, when I was, the summer before I went into, or left home, the summer before my last year of high school, I went on a 3-week backpacking trip called Summit Expedition. And the purpose of that was not only to teach us about backpacking and mountain climbing, but rock climbing and rappelling and all of that, but also to strengthen us inwardly, to strengthen us spiritually, and to question where we were, what we believed, and where we were kind of getting ready to head out and where we were ready to go. So at the end of those 3 weeks, our counselors took each one of us aside and gave us feedback about what they'd witnessed us and how they'd experienced us throughout the 3 weeks. And the guy counselor sits me down and he says, you know, I noticed that every time you're ready to take a risk, you think it through so hard that it's no longer a risk by the time you do it. And I knew that that was supposed to be criticism. And I have to admit, in the back of my head, I'm going, and the problem is? Doesn't that make sense? Why would I want to take a real risk? I don't understand that concept. So I think that that's possibly why this month's topic really resonates with me. The idea that love is expressing as safety, that we are safe in God's presence. So that's what we're focusing on this month. And I also think that that resonated with me back in June when I read in the Science of Mind magazine an article in here by Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones. And he starts off with a story. The story is, once in ancient times there was a man who believed that he was unfairly placed in an isolated, dark, and dank prison cell. There he sat in the corner, separated from the world for months, feeling depressed, resentful, and sorry for himself. Each night after the guard fell asleep, the man leaned against the cell door and he pushed and pushed with all his might, trying to force that door open, but to no avail. Then late one night, after months of pushing, he dropped to his knees in defeat and he mumbled a humble prayer. Dear Lord, I tried everything I know to set myself free. I need some guidance. Please show me the way out. And no sooner had those words departed his lips than a voice gently whispered in his ears, sometimes the way out is in. And suddenly a strong summer wind billowed through the prison and blew the cell door inward toward him and flung it wide open. In his stunned disbelief, he realized that each night before retiring, the guard had closed but never locked the door. The man simply hadn't been consciously aware enough to notice which way the door swung. He took a deep breath and wondered why he had so easily given so much of his power over to the guard. The possibility that in might be the way out didn't exist in his mind because he was too busy resentfully pushing against the door. And so I think about some of these issues, things that we experience, and I feel like they entrap us sometimes. We feel like we're sitting in a prison cell, and we keep pushing against the door, resisting it, and not wanting it to be there, or trying to find our way out by pushing against it. And I liked what he said is he wasn't consciously aware enough to recognize which way the door went. So it's our conscious awareness that that door always, I think, swings inward. And as we go within, that's where we find the answer to how to get our way out. At the end of this article, he concludes with what he's calling 5 mindfulness practices that will assist you in moving toward freedom. And when I thought about safety and feeling safe, I realized that I don't feel free if I don't feel safe. That those two things need to go hand in hand for me. So he has 5 things, and there's a paragraph on each one that I'm not going to go into, but there's one that I really wanted to emphasize. So the first one was being present in the moment. The second one is getting out of denial. The third one was challenging the problem, courageously examining the beliefs that you embrace to see if they correspond with your problem. So just being courageous enough to challenge what that problem is. The fourth one is the one that I really like, being open for guidance. And the fifth one is staying conscious. So in that fourth one, being open to guidance, he says, rather than wasting precious hours, days, weeks, months, and years of your life pushing against the problem, which only gives it more power, make the divine surrender not to the outer condition, but to the inner solution. That sentence was like a major aha for me, because every time I hear let go, let it go, I feel like I'm having to let go to that outer problem. So I loved that idea that we can make the divine surrender not to the outer condition, but to that inner solution that we have, to release that pushing and open up to what that inner idea might be that'll help us to get out. So what does going within and finding that inner guidance have to do with love expressing as safety? Well, first of all, I think that if we believe, which I think most of us in this room do, that God is within us, then going within is going to that place where God is. So what safer place is there than that? Finding that inner space and finding what that guidance is from within. I think we often believe that to be safe, we have to have a really good plan out there. We have to have everything figured out. We need to have everything with us and be well prepared. And any good Boy Scout and Girl Scout knows to be prepared, right? So how do we carry with us everything that we need for every moment? All the first aid kit. Anybody have a first aid kit on them right now? Okay. First aid kits, water, enough food. We don't carry with us everything we need for every moment, but we try to be prepared for everything. And what happens then when that plan that we had changes? What happens when you get to the airport and find out you don't have a ticket? I heard somebody around here had that experience this summer. What happens when what you have prepared doesn't suit the moment? What happens when things shift and change? Something gets lost maybe, you get detained, something gets stolen. When those kind of things happen, sometimes we feel vulnerable. We feel unsafe. And sometimes we even blame God for that. I didn't treat for this. I didn't pray for this. I didn't ask for this. And so we start to feel unsafe as opposed to feeling the safety of that inward experience. So again, in the same Science of Mind magazine, there's an article in here called GIPKEY, G-I-P-K-E-Y, Lessons in Flexibility from the Ukraine. And this is an article about Barbara Ledger, who is the founder and spiritual leader of Temenos Center for Self-Realization in the Ukraine. And they had their 13th annual New Thought gathering there on the banks of the Dnieper River in Cherkasy, Ukraine. I'm sure I did not say any of that right, but it sounds like it was a fabulous event. And in order to prepare the folks going from the United States to the Ukraine, Barbara taught them about this concept of gipki, a Ukrainian concept. And she starts off with an adage from Confucius. The green reed, which bends in the wind, is stronger than the mighty oak, which breaks in the storm. The concept of gipki has to do with being flexible with no matter what shows up. It has to do with being open to spontaneity. And it has to do with setting aside whatever our plans might be so that we can respond with spontaneity in the moment. And our community spiritual leader of all the centers, Dr. Ken Gordon, observed that just because that term gipki comes from the Ukraine doesn't mean that it's something that we haven't all experienced. It's a principle. It's seeing that the ability to be flexible in the community you are in is a gift as opposed to a curse. If you want, you can be inflexible and create a lot of animosity, resentment, disappointment, blame, and anger, or you can simply make the best of the circumstance as it shows up and continue to live joyfully. That's where we're at choice. You can take a breath and say, I have a moment, and it's up to me to make my moment shine or not shine, and it's up to me to make my moment valuable. So on that same trip, at the end of the 3 weeks, the last 3 days of the trip, they split there were several groups out there. So I was only one of, I think, about 9 groups of people that were out, youth that were out with counselors in the Sierras. And they split our little group up into smaller groups. So we were in groups of 3 or 4. They gave us a map and a compass and said, find your way out. I'm not kidding. And they said, we want you to meet us here. There was a big campground where all the groups were to converge. We were going to have our final campfire, all of us together. We had 3 days to find our way out from where we were respectively in all of our groups. So in my little group, we're trucking along. We did really good the first day. Partway through the second day, we realized we were lost. When you're up in the Sierras, sometimes they're not dirt paths, but you follow what they call cairns. Rocks that are piled up, and you get to one cairn and you look around, there's the other one, so you head to that one, then you look around, there's that one, you head to that one, and that's how you find your way down the path and back to what's the dirt path. So we had lost our cairns. We couldn't see any of them, and so we decided, well, we probably should stop for the day. The sun was starting to go down. We set up our little camp, we started a fire, we made our dinner, we hung out, we enjoyed our evening together. And in the morning, we regrouped and decided, well, there's a little stream over here. All streams lead to the bigger rivers that lead to downhill, and downhill leads to civilization. So our rationale was, let's follow the stream to the river and just at least get off the mountain. It didn't matter if we found the group. We wanted to find civilization. So that's what we did, and we followed the river. We're heading down. It was a beautiful day. I can still picture it. And eventually, there comes this dirt path crossing the river. And we looked at our map, and we kind of figured out where we were. And we realized that what had happened is the trail had taken a turn way this way and come back around and crossed the river. We had taken the river straight down. So we hopped back on the trail. We found our way to the campground, and we're one of the first groups to arrive. We cut off several miles, yeah. But I think part of what this was saying in Gipki is we didn't take that opportunity to blame each other. We didn't say, well, whose fault is it that you didn't keep track of where the cairn was? We didn't argue with each other. We just turned it into a whole different experience and figured out from our own inner resources, well, we don't have a trail. What's the next thing we can follow to help ourselves get out of here? So this article concludes with some suggestions for responding when the unexpected hits. And of course, I hadn't read this back then, but this is a perfect example. So you acknowledge, first of all, that change has entered your world. The second thing is you realize that you have a choice. Either you blame others for your new predicament and be angry and feel disappointed and victimized, or you gracefully and graciously adjust to the new reality. Third, you release your expectations and your attachment to the plan, in other words, the map, and you let your ideas go in regard to that initial plan. Then fourth, you accept what is now and trust that all is in the presence of Spirit. 5, you become curious about and open to new resources and possibilities. And 6, you treat the new scenario as an adventure and embrace it with a receptive heart and mind. Something I think maybe for some of us is easier back when we were 18, 19 years old. But if we can bring that forward and follow that concept of Gipki, as they're calling it here, those ideas into the present, imagine then how much safer we would feel in the world if we knew that going inward and that ability to seek out our own inner direction would help us to move along in the direction that we want to go. So what I came up with as I was working on this is that safety isn't so much what's created out here as it is that inward job. Safety is part of the consciousness that I have and the ability to let that door open inward, to go within, and to open to that flexibility that Gipki word embraces. So what else then can we do as we allow that door to open inward to create safety within ourselves? Well, another opportunity I'm having right now is to be a part of a math class. So does anybody remember what this means from math? Yeah, speak up, Kobe.
The absolute value of 5?
The absolute value of 5, which means what about this -5 number?
It's just 5.
It's just 5, or it's a positive number. Exactly. So every negative number that goes between those lines is the absolute value of that number. So every negative number is a positive number when you put those lines there. Now in math, what he was saying, the reason that is because you're counting how far you are away from 0. So no matter what, whether you're moving on the negative side of the scale or the positive, it's still 5 spaces from 0. So the absolute value of -5 becomes 5. But there was something about that concept that I really liked. To find the absolute value of something negative, it becomes positive. So I looked up the word absolute, you know me, in dictionaries. Absolute is not qualified or diminished in any way. It's total. The absolute is free from imperfection. It's perfect. In philosophy, they use the word absolute as a value or principle that is regarded as universally valid, that may be viewed without relation to any other thing. So it stands alone. That which exists without being dependent on anything else. And in theology, the absolute is ultimate reality, or God, or the most real being, the being that transcends and comprehends all other beings. That's the term for the absolute. So then I started thinking, well, what's the absolute value of anything? That ultimate value, the God value. So if we take our negative thoughts or experiences, issues, and stuff that comes up, and look for that absolute value, we will be seeking the positive. We'll be seeking the good. We'll be seeking that wholeness. Ricky Byers has a song that says it all melts into God. And that's, in my mind, another way of saying it's all part of that absolute value. You stick those lines in front of it and it becomes positive. So I've been doing this. The sign for absolute value are the 2 lines. So we talk about a number, we do this to show we want the absolute value of that number. So I started thinking, at least within us, we can help each other remember. If we start hearing negativity and going down that line, what's the absolute value of that situation? And if you think in terms of value, what's the God value? What's the positive value? What's the wholeness? What stands on its own? What's the absolute truth or absolute love in that situation? We can help each other then calculate the absolute value of any situation that comes our way. So as usual, I thought, well, okay, that's a great fun thing. You know, my mind goes off in these little tangents. But how do we apply that in real life? What can we do to bring that concept of finding the absolute value into real life? And there's an article, again, I love the Spirituality and Health. This is September, October magazine. And Rabbi Rami Shapiro has an article in here called Healing Truth Behind All Our Great Religions. And apparently they have started, I don't know who they is exactly, I would have had to research even more, but there's a group and you can mail to them and they will send you what is called the World Wisdom Bible. And it's a book they've put together with sayings and quotes from all of the different world religions. And they'll send that to you and 12 coffee cups because they are creating not another world religion, but they're creating peace 12 coffee cups at a time. The idea is you take the book, you bring 12 people together, you have coffee, tea, whatever, and you discuss things in the book. Learn about the other religions. Learn about what works for you, what you're hearing, what doesn't, without judgment, without feeling a need to do it or not, but you can create then a place where peace is starting to be understood. He says, this story is rooted in one simple idea. When you know the truth shall set you free. And that's a quote from the Christian scriptures, John 8:32. The truth we are talking about is called perennial wisdom. Perennial because it reoccurs in every civilization throughout recorded human history, and wisdom because it reveals the true nature of life and how best to live it. What perennial wisdom frees you from is the illusion of others that fuels the sense of fear and alienation that drives so much of our ego-centered lives. So as you seek that perennial wisdom throughout all teachings, you get freed from that fear. He said, in the context of perennial wisdom, truth is what leads us beyond alienation and isolation to integration and unity. It is that which leads us beyond fear to love, beyond exploitation of the other to justice for all, beyond violence and war to cooperation and peace, and beyond zero-sum, winner-takes-all worldview of us against them to the non-zero, win-win worldview of all of us together. In the context of perennial wisdom, truth is that which collapses the divisions between chosen and not chosen, believer and infidel, saved and damned, and leads to the understanding that we are all one community of seekers. This article is way longer, but another sentence that I really wanted to point out that I thought was interesting here is he talks about our ability to learn religions like we do language. Change how we think about it. If we can grow up with one language and learn other languages, it doesn't hurt us to do that. And he's saying it's the same about other people's wisdom teaching and other people's religions. Think about it like learning another language. Then he says, some may find it odd that while we claim to respect all religions, we reject the absolutist truth claims of every religion. So there's that word again being used differently. The absolutist, the idea that ours is the only way. So we also say here, we support all paths to God. And I think that sums it up really well, that we respect all religions without claiming the absolutist of each one. And what that's doing as we seek that perennial wisdom is, I would also say, we're seeking the absolute. We're seeking the absolute without becoming absolutist about what it is that we're teaching or believing. So as I pictured that and as I thought about these concepts, I thought, how much safer would the world be if everyone were able to come together over 12 cups of coffee and share what works for them, that perennial wisdom, without needing to argue over which is the absolute, and knowing that there's a larger absolute truth out there that just encompasses everyone and everything.
Excuse the Baptist remark. Amen, sister.
That's all right. We'll support that too. Yeah. So we want to open to that concept. So one last thought as I'm thinking about safety and how we create safety in our world. I'm sure you all can complete this sentence. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but... And I've heard it both ways. Names will never hurt me or words will never hurt me. Either way, I figured you all had heard that. So I think I shared last month that I've been reading a book called iGen This is about the I generation. It's very interesting if you're interested in understanding the new generation of youth that are just now leaving high school and moving into college, and some of the ways that they are thinking and feeling about the world. This woman has been doing research from 1976 till now, interviewing high school kids and early college kids to just get a sense of what they're thinking and what's happening. She tries to report it without judgment. Her idea is that I'm just showing you the trends. I'm not making a judgment about what's happening. So it's a very good book. And one of the things about this new generation, as I'm seeing it, for me, they're new, the new students that are coming in there at the university. They were born in around 1995 to 2012, somewhere in that range. And she refers to them as the I generation because of the internet or the iPhone. They have been raised with both their whole lives. And one of the things that she pointed out, and so again, it's obviously a big book, and I'm just going to summarize real scrunchy here, but that this generation wants to be safe. Comparatively to other generations, this generation wants to be safe physically and emotionally. So you're seeing less of those risky behaviors, less drinking, less drugging, less sex that's unprotected, and even sex at a later age. Teen pregnancies have gone down. So that's the good news. What you're also seeing is that there's an equation between emotional safety and physical safety. Well, we used to say sticks and stones will break our bones, but names will never hurt us. They're saying no, both hurts. Both hurts. Bullying hurts. Cyberbullying hurts. And in this generation, both physical and mental pain is seen as equal, and they want to be safe of both. Now, the other thing that I found interesting, though, is that there's a larger percent, that the curve drops drastically, who do not believe in God, do not have a religion or a spirituality. And what you're also seeing, a rise in suicide and a rise in depression. Now, we can analyze, and she's got all the statistics. You can figure out, well, what's going on here. What I started to think about in light of what I was talking about today is what happens when you can create your entire world is safe out here, but you don't have a connection with the absolute in here, whatever you want to call it. You don't feel safe in here. That's when you get depression. That's when you get higher rates of suicide. And so I think we have a huge opportunity to reach out to this generation. I'm just putting it out there. I'm putting it out there because I would love to see us be able to bring a teaching to a group of people that supports where they are. They want to support people. They want to see equality. They want to see justice for all. They want all of that, social justice, and they want to feel safe, but they don't have that connection yet with the inside, with that absolute. So I think we have a lot that we can offer. So ultimately, what I have started to see then is if we're still trying to prepare, if we're still trying to keep all that safety going out there, they wear seatbelts, they wear helmets, they lock their doors, they do all those low-risk behaviors. We can do all that, and it's not to say that there's anything wrong with that. That's good. But ultimately, we're not going to feel safe until we have a sense of safety from within, a sense of being safe in the world from the inside out. So how are we then relying on others to keep us safe? One of the things that she noted is that this generation believes their parents, the teachers at school, the people that run the universities, that's who's responsible for keeping them safe. It's not an inside-out sort of thing. So how are we, I always look at the mirror, how are we depending on others to keep us safe? How are we forgetting that door opens inward? How many say, oh, well, my minister or practitioner thinks that, they're praying for me, I'm good, I don't have to do the work. Well, I'm here to tell you that I can't open your door inward for you. We can teach classes, we can guide, we can set examples, we can create a safe space to learn and grow and discuss things, but I we as practitioners can't create that sense of safety inside. We can't push that door open. You all have to allow it to open inward. You have to take yourself in and allow yourself to find that connection with the absolute. Only you can do that for you. And so as we do that, as we seek within for that absolute truth, that absolute value in all things, we shift then the negative into the positive. We allow our thinking to shift from the negative into the positive. We allow ourselves to go within where that absolute love that is not tainted by anything, exists. We go within where, as our reading said this morning, our heart remains unhurt. And so at this point, I would like to read that again and ask you to just listen to those words with this thought in mind, allowing it to come in, and just see if it sounds any different. Emerson said, "The universe remains to the heart unhurt." And Jesus said, "It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." The kingdom is something we do not earn. It is a gift of heaven. This heart that is unhurt is the heart that God gave us. We alone have refused the gift, if we're not experiencing it now. It has never been withheld. From the day we first ushered into this world until the last moment when the soul takes its silent flight into the unseen, our life is drawn from an invisible source. It is intended that we should be happy. It is meant that we should live to the full, that we should sing and dance and be glad, that we should love and be loved in return. But in our ignorance, we have inhibited the action of God in our lives. And so we have cut ourselves off from the only power that can heal us. The only sensible thing to do is retrace our steps and start all over. And I would say, go within. We should not do this with any sense of morbidity or fear, but rather with the feeling of an explorer who knows that there is an undiscovered country and who is willing to take time to find it. There is an undiscovered country in our own minds. It is the world the way God made it. There is a humanity that we have not yet met. It is the divinity hidden within each one of us. There is a God who exists everywhere. We shall never see this God until we look through the eyes of our own divinity. And I think the only way that we will do that is by going within. So at this time, I'm going to ask the practitioners to surround this room while I continue with Ernest Holmes' words, because this is meant as an affirmation or a prayer. So just take this within. Thank you. God is all there is. You could say the absolute truth. God is love. Love is the motivating power of the whole universe. God is in everything. God is in everyone. Realizing that love is the great motivating power of life, and knowing that God must be at the center of everything, today I meet this God in everyone, and seeing the manifestation of God's life in everything. If there is any condemnation or animosity in me, I gladly lose it. I lose it and let it go, as I turn to that silent presence within me which gives all and withholds nothing. I enter into the harmony of eternal peace, into the joy of knowing that I am now in the kingdom of God, from which no person is excluded. My yesterdays are gone forever. My tomorrows stretch forth in an endless future of pure delight. And from out of the invisible there come to me these words: today thou art with me in paradise. And I conclude with, isn't that the safest place that I could ever be? And so it is. Thank you, practitioners. I have one more question for you. Are you ready to calculate the absolute value of everything that shows up in your life?
Yes, I am.
Absolutely. And so it is.